we're going to be taking a look at how to understand really insane jazz chord progressions. So we're going to be taking a look at this tune. It's called Stablemates by Benny Golson. And before we get into the analysis, I'm just going to play a short little solo over this chord progression so that I can show you that, I actually kind of know what I'm talking about, right? By the way, it's going to be kind of a not short video, so I know it's 2023 and you expect me to show you everything in like 30 seconds. Have some kind of attention span. All right, so we will finish the little playing part there. So this is a really, really cool tune. And as you can see by looking at the chart that I got here on the screen, there are a lot of chords in this tune. So I'm going to do my best to show you how to break down a chord progression like this. So let's pull up the iPad here. I know that the view of my guitar is not going to be super huge. Don't worry about that because we are going to spend a lot of time here kind of looking at the chart and then going back and forth on the iPad. So before we even get started here, let's just establish what key this tune is in. It's kind of hard to establish what key a crazy progression like this is in. But I'll just tell you right now, it's actually in the key of D flat major. And as we go through this video, you're going to understand a little bit more why it's in the key of D flat major, okay? So whenever we know that a song is in a certain key, we want to make sure that we know all of the chords that belong to that key. So we're talking about seventh chords here. So you want to know that the first chord is going to be D flat major 7, and then we got E flat minor 7, F minor 7, G flat major 7, A flat dominant 7, B flat minor 7, and then actually C half diminished 7. Okay, so we're going to see this popping up a lot, but as you can see, there's actually a lot of chords that are not found in the key of D flat. So there's your 1 chord, your 2 chord, your 3 chord, your 4 chord, your 5 chord, the 6, and then the 7 half diminished chord. So first of all, if we look at the chart now, let's try to just start with this first bar because the first bar is already throwing us a curveball. So this first bar, I'll just tell you right now, is actually in the key of D major. What the heck? How is that even possible? I just told you that this song's in the key of D flat major, and now I'm telling you the first measure is actually in the key of D major. How does that make any sense? Well, in a lot of these chord progressions, literally, it might change keys from bar to bar to bar. And you're going to see as we go through this, it really comes down to that as like figuring out what key this bar is in, or what key maybe these 2 bars are in, or 3 bars if we're lucky. So this progression here is actually, if you notice, the exact same thing as the second bar, but it's up a half step. So the second bar is actually E flat minor 7, A flat 7. And now if we look in our keys listed out here from the key of D flat major, whoops, let's not do that. We look here in the key of D flat major, we got E flat minor 7 right there. And then we also have A flat 7. So this is actually what we call a 2-5 progression. Now, in tons of these crazy jazz chord progressions, really what happens is that there's different keys that we take 2 5s from. 2-5 is such an unbelievably common progression that you start to just notice this pattern. So when I see that bar there, E flat minor 7, A flat 7, I almost don't even think of those as 2 separate chords. I just think of it as one unit, which is a 2-5. Or if you'll see, a lot of times 2-5 turns into 2-5-1. And I've mentioned this in a lot of my other videos before. So actually, if we go back now, this E flat minor 7, E minor 7, A7 is actually a 2-5 in the key of D major. So E minor 7, A7 is 2-5 in D. Okay? So pretty easy to understand it if you realize that, oh, this is just a 2-5. So it's really cool because this is what we call a sidestep technique. So it's literally just the same thing, E minor 7, A7. And if you check my last video that I did on shell voicings, you can use those to play through this progression. And then you play the exact same chord pattern down a half step to play the next bar. Okay, so we got a 2-5 in the key of D, and then we have a 2-5 in the key of D flat that comes in the second bar. Okay, so let's move on from there. As you see, we're gonna have to literally go bar by bar here with this. So D flat major 7. So I just mentioned that we're in the key of D flat. So what would this be in the key of D flat? Look at the chord chart right there and tell me what that would be. Yeah, it's just the 1 chord, right? Pretty easy. So that's actually a 2-5-1. Once we get to that 1 chord, we have this resolution. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the 2-5, is to take us to a 1 chord actually. But of course, as you're gonna see in this video, oftentimes the 2-5 might not necessarily take us to the 1 chord where it's supposed to. By the way, anytime you see any dominant chord, you should just automatically be thinking it's the 5 chord in a certain key, because that's the only time you ever find any dominant chord is going to be the 5 chord. So you have to sort of reverse engineer. Okay, I see that there's a dominant chord there. What key is that dominant chord from? So A flat 7 is the 5 in the key of D flat. So this is why it's super duper critically important for you to be able to do this quickly. You gotta know all of the keys or all the chords that are in all 12 keys. Super duper critically important. Now, along those same lines, let's check out the 4th bar. So the 4th bar is this kind of crazy sounding chord here, C7 sharp 5. So for right now, let's kind of ignore the fact that it says sharp 5. Let's just pay attention to the fact that it says C7. So C7 is a dominant chord. And what did I just say about dominant chords? Oh yeah, I just said that dominant chords are always the 5 chord in a key. So this just so happens to be the 5 in the key of F. So that C7 chord is actually designed to take you to some sort of F chord. A lot of times it's going to take you to an F major chord, or it could take you to an F minor chord as well. That's the whole sort of purpose, is literally that thing is supposed to go like this. There, that would be some sort of F major chord there, or it could go to an F minor chord. But in this case, it's sort of subverting that expectation, because now if we look at the next bar, we have A flat minor 7. What the heck? How do we even explain that? So, a lot of times, that's what makes these chord progressions crazy, is then it sets up an expectation and then just completely just goes a different direction than where you thought it was going to go. So I'm just going to chalk it up to, in this case, that it's what we call a deceptive resolution. Now, there's lots of different ways to define deceptive resolution, but in this case, I'm just going to call it that it's just not going where it's supposed to go. Okay, so we're going to a different key that we're not technically supposed to go to, okay? So now let's look at these next 3 bars, actually. I know this is going to be kind of a long video, but I want to try to show you how you can do this a little bit more quickly once you've figured out some of these things with knowing all the chords in each key. So if you notice here, there's another minor chord, another dominant chord, and then a major 7 chord. So this is actually a 2-5-1 in the key of G flat. So A flat minor 7, D flat 7, G flat major 7 is 2-5-1 in G flat. Okay, so pretty simple. We're just changing keys there. So the point of this too, knowing what key we're in, is because now I know, even if I don't know the arpeggios or anything like that over this progression, what I can do is I can actually just play the key of G flat over this whole entire thing. Okay, so let's move on. Next bar. So actually next 2 bars, let's check those out. So G half diminished 7, that's what that little circle, the slash through it means. C7 flat 9, F minor 7. So remember, we actually had a C7 before, and I told you that C7 is supposed to take us to some sort of F chord. So here we go. Now we have another C7, and it does finally take us an F chord. So this is what that progression would sound like. Okay, there's that progression. So G half diminished, C7, and F minor 7, or actually I'm playing F minor 9 there, but I'm a jazz guitar player. I just throw in these, you know, the extensions and so on and so forth. But that's the general gist of the sound of this. So this is like our 2 5s that we had before here, the E minor 7, the A7, the E flat minor 7, the A flat 7. This is what we would call a 2-5 in a minor key. So without getting too much into detail on it, when we deal with minor keys, the 2 chord is actually half diminished, not minor 7. Okay, so just know that whenever you see this, a half diminished chord followed by a dominant 7 chord, all kinds of alarm bells should be going off. That's a minor 2-5, like 99.9% of the time. Technically, it could be that it's not a minor 2-5, but 99.9% of the time, it's going to be a minor 2-5. And what do you know? It actually resolves where it's supposed to. So it's in the key of F minor. So G half diminished is 2, C7 flat 9 is 5, and then F minor 7 is the 1 chord. So now, here's the thing though, that F minor 7 isn't just the 1 chord. If we go look at our chords in the key of D flat major that we wrote down before, it's actually the 3 chord in the key of D flat major. So that is actually found in here. So now, right after that, there's a B flat 7 chord. What did I say about dominant chords? It's a 5 chord. It's supposed to take us somewhere. That's the whole point of a dominant chord. It takes us somewhere. So B flat 7 is actually the 5 chord in a key of E flat. So that could take us to either an E flat major or an E flat minor chord. Let's see, does that happen? Oh, yeah, it does happen. It goes to an E flat minor 7 chord, which just so happens, by the way, to be the 2 chord in the key of D flat major. Isn't that crazy? So we're kind of seeing this pattern where there's different chords that are in the key of D flat major, and if we only use those chords, the progression might not be as interesting. But what Benny Golson does here is he takes the dominant chords that are designed to take us somewhere, and it uses it to create tension to take us to these different chords. So that's actually a concept that's called secondary dominant. Okay, secondary dominant. So that's when we temporarily depart from a key by using the 5 chord, or using rather a dominant chord, to pull us to a different chord that's in the key we're sort of dealing with. So theoretically, I could figure out a dominant chord that will take us to the 2 chord, or to the 3 chord, or to the 4 chord, or to the 5 chord. Any of these chords has a corresponding dominant chord that is designed to create tension to take us to that chord, okay? So we have this is the 3 chord, then this is sort of like the 6 chord, by the way. We could think of that because the 6 chord is B flat minor 7, but instead we turned it into a dominant so that it would create this pull. Let's hear what that sounds like, by the way. So this is our B flat minor 7, like it would normally be in the key of D flat major. But then now if I do this, make it dominant, that is just begging to go here. So here's F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat minor 7. It sounds so nice when that dominant 7 chord resolves to that E flat minor 7 chord, which again is the 2 chord in the key of D flat major. Okay, so now let's see what comes after that. Oh, A flat 7. Alarm bells should be going off. That's some kind of dominant chord. Oh, wait a second. We already saw that one before. Right here. A flat 7. And it went to D flat major 7. So that's actually just the 5 chord in the key of D flat, right? So we got A flat 7, and then it goes to D flat major 7. So it actually just happens again here. So this is why I say that this tune's in the key of D flat, because you see, after all these crazy departures, like, you know, going to the key of G flat over here, and then having these different secondary dominants, like I said, that's kind of the name for that technique. At the end of the day, we end up on D flat major 7, and if you don't know this little symbol here, that just means you repeat the same chord. So this is actually 2 measures of D flat major 7, okay? So that makes it sort of feel like our home base. So after this whole entire sequence here, actually let's do this whole entire sequence. So I play it G half diminished, C7, F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat minor 7, A flat 7, and then we resolve to D flat major 7. That sounds so beautiful. You could use any number of different chord voicings. If you want to learn more about chord voicings, check out my 3 Steps to Advanced Chords PDF down below. That'll show you all kinds of super cool chord voicings that you can use over any tune like this. And also check out my shell voicing primer. That's actually kind of where you should start, at least for playing jazz tunes. It'll just give you some basic versions of all these chords. Okay, so make sure you also hit the like button, by the way. I should have said that a lot earlier. Hit the like button, it really helps me out a lot. Hit that thumbs up wherever you're watching. Please hit the like button, I really appreciate it. All right, so now, guess what? We're actually almost done. I know it looks like there's a lot of stuff left, but this is the A section that we just finished. And then we just have the A section again. So we're actually almost done. We just need to deal with the B section here, okay? Or as also known as the bridge. So the bridge, let's see if there's any chords in there we've already seen before. So this is the first chord of the bridge. We got F minor 7. Yeah, we saw that chord before, right? So here we actually just go to F minor 7. There's no C7 that comes before it or 2-5 or anything like that. It just sort of goes right there. And then we go to F minor 7. So we're in for a little bit of a doozy here in this bridge, but just bear with me, okay? So now we got this G flat 7 chord. So again, alarm bells should be going off. Oh, that's a dominant chord. That's the 5 chord from some key, right? G flat 7 would actually be the 5 chord from the key of C flat, or if you called it an F sharp 7, it would be the dominant chord from the key of B. The key of C flat is kind of ridiculous to think about, but anyway, let's see what happens after that, because that's sort of what you really need to pay attention to. Whenever you see any kind of dominant chord, you got to think what's going to happen after that, right? So what the heck? It went to G7 after that? So it basically just went up a half step. So we had a G flat 7, and then it went up a fret on the guitar, up a half step. So here's the thing. People take this idea of dominant chords really, really far, where after a while, you stop caring about having it resolved properly. You could technically call this another deceptive resolution. Most people actually think of this sort of thing as a deceptive motion, where it goes up. The deceptive sort of resolution is something that actually comes from initially classical music, where the 5 chord resolves up to the 6 chord. So in this case, it would kind of sound like this. But in this case, it's not quite. It's like a chromatic sort of variation of that. But anyway, we're going to see that actually this is just going to be a giant sequence of dominant chords. Because look, we had G flat 7. Let's go through this a little bit more quickly. G7, then a C7, then B7, then B flat 7, then A7, then A flat 7. What the heck? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different dominant 7 chords in a row, which means we're in 7 different keys in 7 different bars. How is that even possible? You know what I'm saying? So we are going to figure out how to deal with this, okay? So G flat 7, what we should do is just start thinking at this point, when we see a crazy sequence of dominant chords like this, we need to think, what key does that dominant chord come from? And literally just play that key over that measure, and then we got to change keys in the next measure, okay? So G flat 7, we should just think of it as F sharp 7. It actually comes from the key of B. So let's actually scroll down here a bit for a second, give us some more room, because we're going to list out all the keys. So G flat 7 equals the key of B major. Okay, so we got the key of B major. Now, G7 sharp 5. That sharp 5 kind of complicates things a little bit, because it implies sort of a different scale. There's actually different ways that we can play dominant chords. Don't want to get too into that right now, but you can use what's called an altered sound on this. But let's just think of the actual key that it comes from for right now, okay? So let's move this out of the way. Okay, G7. Okay, hang on one second. I gotta figure out what's going on with this. I need some more space. More space, please. Gonna have to edit this out. Okay, hang on one second. Let's just. This is gonna work now. Okay. Okay, great. So Jeez, okay. Let's erase this. All right, let's just erase everything, and then we will continue from there. Okay, so we got G flat 7 is in the key of B. And then we got G7 is actually in the key of C major. So if you know about this, you should, if you're even watching this video, you should know what the chords in the key of C major are. Okay, so if you don't know that, just turn this video off right now. Go learn the diatonic chords in the key of C major. So it just so happens that actually that G7 is going to some kind of C chord, but it's going to a C dominant 7 chord, right? So C7 is actually from the key of F major. Okay, then it goes to B7. So even if you didn't know really well all of the different diatonic chords in every single key, once you know that the C7 is in the key of F major, well, B is just 1/2 step below, so you just move the whole key down a 1/2 step. So that's the cool thing here, is that really you're gonna see the keys just moving down a 1/2 step every time. So then we have B7, which comes from the key of E major. And then we have B flat 7, which comes in the key of E flat major. And then we have A7, which we actually saw before, right? Remember the first bar, E minor 7, A7? Remember what key that was? It was the key of D. Well, guess what? This bar here is also in the key of D. D major. And then finally, A flat 7. You saw that one before too, a few times, right? A flat 7 is there, and A flat 7 is also there. So A flat 7 is now we're sort of returning back to the key of D flat major. So A flat 7 equals the key of D flat major. So guys, anytime you see any sort of sequence like this of dominant chords, step number 1 is you got to just think, what key do those dominant chords come from? And you got to be able to play those keys. So, you know, if I'm playing over this tune, here, G flat 7, I'm thinking, that's the key of B major. And then when I get to this G7 sharp 5, I could play the key of C major actually on it. Like I said though, that sharp 5 does complicate things just a little bit. I'm gonna have to make another video on this because this is just gonna take way too long. But sharp 5 could actually be what's called the altered scale, which also has other altered extensions like the flat 5 actually, and the flat 9 and sharp 9. So over that particular bar, I'll just tell you, I'll kind of cheat and give you the answer. You could actually play A flat melodic minor over that bar. That sort of gives you that different sound of that sharp 5 and other extensions that go in it. But then, just as regular old C7, you play the key of F major. On the B7, you can play the key of E major. On the key of B, on this one, the B flat 7, you play the key of E flat major. On the A7, you play the key of D major. And then the A flat 7, you play the key of D flat. Okay, so of course, since it's moving downwards too, it sounds a little bit more pro if you can change keys moving upwards instead. Something like this. right? So it's not so obvious you're just doing the exact same thing. That's, that's super duper easy to do. But anyway, that's getting into more in the weeds than we want to go in this video anyway. So guess what? That's pretty much it. So let's just recap everything that we learned here, because we just finished the bridge, and now the A section is exactly the same as the first A section. So E minor 7, A7, that's a 2-5 in the key of D. This is a 2-5 in the key of D flat. Then we got the 1 chord, D flat major. C7 sharp 5, that's supposed to take us to an F minor chord, but it doesn't go there. It goes to this. Then this is a 2-5-1 in the key of G flat. Then we got this minor 2-5 to F minor, which is also the 3 chord, which is why that sounds really good to sort of modulate there. Then we got this dominant chord that takes us to the 2 chord. So this is 5 of the 2 chord. And then finally we just have a 5 chord that takes us to the 1 chord. So that's the A section. And in the B section, we just got F minor, which can also be thought of as the 3 chord in the key of D flat major. Then we got G flat 7, which is the key of B. Then G7, which is the key of C major / C minor / I told you could also play A flat melodic minor on that. Then C7, which is in the key of F. B7, which is in the key of E. B flat 7, which is in the key of E flat. A7, which is in the key of D. And then A flat 7, which is in the key of D flat. Then A section just repeats everything. So I know that was an unbelievable, crazy amount of information. I told you we're going to be analyzing crazy chord progressions. So just to recap and just set you up with the things that you should learn so that you can do this on your own, you got to know all the diatonic chords in every single key. Okay, if you don't know that, I can't help you. You are not going to be able to survive something like this. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how many times you heard about this guitar player that doesn't know theory or that guitar player that only uses tab. You're not going to be able to do it, okay? You're just not. Sorry. So you got to learn all the diatonic chords in all 12 keys. And then once you know that, you need to go through and identify which measures are in what key. So you need to be very, very aware of the fact that some of these progressions can be changing keys left, right, and center, literally from bar to bar. And the thing that should be going off in your mind is the dominant chords. Dominant chords are going to be the 5 chord from a certain key. So that's why you need to know all your chords in every key, because then you're not going to be able to figure out what key each dominant chord comes from. So if you understand all those things, you can take a look at any of these crazy progressions in any of these charts and you will be totally fine. So I hope that this video helped. I know that it was crazy. Thank you for sticking with me to the end if you did. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.